Being a Chicago Bulls fan comes with its own stress, right? I think being a fan of a team that is so fine being mediocre has its levels of frustration that are just at times difficult to deal with. On today's episode, we're going to talk about why the Bulls embracing mediocrity is going to keep them in a place where we're not just in sports purgatory, we're in NBA hell. We'll talk about it all and more right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bulls Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bulls news and content.
When the NBA created the play-in tournament, it did so to give teams that were on the cusp of making the playoffs a chance to make it, despite maybe being a few games below the other teams in the playoff race, right? It took now the teams that are in the 7th and 8th seed. They added to the teams that are in the 9th and 10th seed, and it made them have a single elimination, basically tournament to get into the playoffs. It added a little excitement for NBA fans, right? Now, unfortunately, one thing and one result of the play-in is that it can convince teams that are further away that they're closer than what they really are. And the Bulls have been one of the teams that have fluctuated around and kind of embrace that mediocrity, and it's not even really being in the middle. Last night I was live on this channel with Vaughn, in which we talked about what the Bulls should do at the trade deadline, and I pointed out that, we call it being in the middle. The Bulls really aren't in the middle. A handful of years ago, being where the Bulls are now would mean that you are out of the playoffs, that you're don't have a chance to go into the playoffs, and that you're towards the bottom of your respective conference. But now, with the play-in tournament, it has given teams hope. And the teams that are smart enough understand where they are, and they don't embrace that. They try to continually get better. Unfortunately, we have a team, we have a franchise, we have a front office that, despite what they've said at times, continue embracing this play-in tournament and this mindset that they are farther along than what they are. Some fans have even adopted that mindset, right? Thinking that because this team is in the play-in and technically however many games out, that they're not that far off. Well, I got news flash for everybody. The Bulls are that far off. And it makes it even worse when you pair this with what AK has said. We're going back just to April, after the Bulls got eliminated in the last play-in tournament, where he said this: "We aren't here for the play-in. It's a team game, and we have to make changes to fix things. I take responsibility for where we are right now." And now, after that comment, we've traded Alex Caruso for Josh Giddey. We drafted Matas Buzelis. We let DeMar DeRozan and Andre Drummond go in free agency. Replace that with Jalen Smith, right? And now this team sits in a place where you don't own your own first-round pick this year. It is what it is. That came from a trade that you made long before you got to this place, right? And the reluctance and the quietness from this front office on the state of this team, I called him yesterday. I said that AK is a coward. And I meant every word of that, right? Because where we're sitting here, and it's clearly this team is not achieving even its most mediocre of goals, and make no mistake about it, the play-in tournament is it's not even, it's not a mediocre goal. It's a bottom-tier goal, right? And, you have, I've said it before, fans just want a direction. And fans are grasping for what they feel that direction is. And unfortunately, the Bulls are doing neither. For my fans that want to see the Bulls keep the first-round pick, they're not doing that, right? It doesn't seem like they're going to do it as of right now. Now, they have a chance to do it, and that's, we've talked about that heavily as well. The Bulls right now think they have the 9th best record ninth best chances at the number 1 overall pick, which means that they are in the bottom 10. But unfortunately, with a lottery being one of the things that determines, the draft order overall, the Bulls can still miss out on their top 10 pick. For my Bulls fans that want to see this team really compete and do something, we're not doing that at a high enough level either, right? We're not doing that. And so for the people that keep saying that this team is one player away, I adamantly disagree. Now, depending on the caliber of that one player, maybe you can try to convince some things, but unfortunately, this is what we got to talk about again. How's that one player getting here? There is no assets really to make that happen. Right, as of right now, at this trade deadline, the Bulls can't trade any of their first round picks because the Spurs hold protections on the Bulls picks for the next 3 years. This year and the next 2 years afterwards. And then you can't trade the first year after that, right? You have to wait a gap year between that. So the Bulls can't really trade a bunch of their, a first round pick to try to get a player in here. And don't get me started on that Portland pick that's technically first round protected. That pick's never conveying. The Portland Trailblazers have to make the playoffs for us to even get that pick. That's not happening anytime soon. So you're looking at the Chicago Bulls as of right now, the next time that they can trade one of their first round picks is 2030 as of right now. Now that changes this summer if we convey to the Spurs. If we do convey that pick to the Spurs, then we can trade our 2027 pick. Now, that's still not going to necessarily gain the Bulls a whole lot because you still got to match salaries. We're still a team that doesn't like to pay the luxury tax, right? So we don't have the type of salary cap space to make something happen because we still got extensions coming to Coby White and Ayo Dosunmu, and the Bulls are going to have to allow, which is another thing that we're going to talk about here in a second, right? The Bulls sit in a place where even some of their assets that they have, they're not able to lock in right now. Coby White is not going to sign an extension with the Bulls. Doesn't mean he's not going to re-sign with the Bulls because if he signs a contract extension, meaning at some point in this offseason or next season because he's extension eligible the whole season, all the Bulls can offer him is $18 million in an extension. Now, if they allow him to become an unrestricted free agent, they can pay him up to, I think, a third of the salary cap. He can make money. Are the Bulls going to pay him that, right? Are they going to do the same thing that they basically did with Zach? Now, Zach was in a much different position, and I think he was even much more consistent than what Coby White has been, but that's a decision that's pending. Ayo Dosunmu sits in the same place, right? With an extension, he can only make so much money, right? He can only make so much money with an extension. So then at that point, you're asking yourself, like, all right, what are we doing, right? So the Bulls, even their future, unless their players are willing to take less, unless Coby and Ayo are willing to take less than what they would get if they just wait a couple of more months to become unrestricted free agents, then re-signing with the Bulls, that means that, hey, you got to make some decisions on your salary cap space because while, yeah, you got $56 million below the first tax apron this year that you can play with, right? And that grows each year. You can re-sign all these guys, but then you're right back where you were just not even a whole year ago where you have no real flexibility and your roster's mainly locked in. And then you better hope and trust that this roster is going to be a roster that can get you somewhere. So the Bulls have, they have that first tax, that $57 million underneath the first tax apron this upcoming offseason. $122 million the next offseason after that where Coby and Ayo have to be decided on. But then it won't be 120 because you got to make your decision on Josh Giddey, right? So this team doesn't have right now a solidified future either in making moves or even keeping the own pieces, even if you did want to try to sell us on that. But then we also know that AK he also knows this isn't the roster. Saying this, as far as keeping the top 10 pick, I mean, this is not our focus. Our focus going into the season is basically to define our style of play and find our identity. What's our identity with this group? And the last thing I'm trying to think about is how we have a home court advantage playing in this building. Last year, we had a losing record. Those are the kind of things that I'm trying to focus on instead of what's going to happen after the season. So let's get back. Let's get to those goals that AK set out, right? Our focus going into the season is to define our style of play. Have the Bulls defined their style of play? I think I'll say that's probably the closest goal that they've gotten to that he laid out here. That you have this fast pace, you're moving the ball around. When we move the ball around and get everybody involved, when we have around 28, 30 assists, there's a style of play there. Now, I would say that style of play still has left a lot to be desired as far as Coby White's place in that with what fits his skill set, that type of thing. That's still something that's up in air here. Coby and Giddey fitting together is still something that's up in air here as well. And so when you have your style of play, but you still are not waiting, but you still aren't necessarily maximizing the skill set of certain players here with how they like to play, it can still be a question. But I'd say that that's the closest that they've reached out of what they've said here. What's our identity with this group? Unless you want your identity to be losing, sucking, and being disappointing, there's no identity here with this Chicago Bulls team. There just isn't. There's not. We have no identity as of right now. And the last thing I'm trying to think about is, do we have a home court? A home court advantage? We are in the we started a freaking 5-game homestand in which we've won one game on. One game. One game. So I don't think we have that home court advantage, my brother. Like respectively, AK. No, sorry, we suck at home. We're 8-14 at home. 8-14 at home. 10-9 on the road. Yeah. How's that home advantage going for you, AK? What it all comes down to is that the Bulls are just a utterly disappointing mess. And we once again find ourselves in the same exact, I know I said it the other day. We changed some of the faces to just stay right in the same place that we are. The same the same position in the Eastern Conference. And it's the same shit. To just be frank, we are in the same exact place that we have been, that we will be, because again, this team as of right now has no clear direction in future. Zach LaVine and Nikola Vučević are playing great. And I want to be clear, and other players are playing solidly, right? But I think when you look at this as well as like I've said, like when people say, well, why would we move players that are playing great? Because they are having such great seasons. And look at where we are because of that. Like, for all that it is, for Zach LaVine and Nikola Vučević season being what it is, and they have been really good seasons, look at where we are for that. If players have to play at an all-star level for you to fight for the 10th seed, which, like I said, if the damn Philadelphia 76ers played to the talent that they have on their roster, we wouldn't even be that. Imagine having two players, that one in Zach LaVine that is having his most efficient season of his NBA career, Nikola Vučević, who's having his best season as a Bull statistically and efficiency-wise, even though that's starting to come down. And for you to take all of that and say, we're still barely in the play-in. Barely in the play-in. That's not what we fight for. That's not something that you should be looking at and fight for. You need to get better. And so once again, this team is stuck in the middle and they're not making progress in either direction. And that's the dangerous part of all of this, because you can stay here. If this is your bar for competitiveness, you can stay here for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years. But what have you really gotten out of that? And Billy Donovan admitting this after the game. We have razor thin margins here right now. Razor thin margins here right now. Razor thin margins. You are barely getting by at being a bottom tier team. That's where we are. That's where the razor thinness has left us. We're a bad team. We're a bad basketball team. And then when you hear things like, with the 3 remaining weeks until the trade deadline, questions are beginning to swirl around the Bulls of whether the franchise will be active at all. Listen, what's your goal here? You say that the play-in is not what you're aiming for. You said that you knew that this roster wasn't going to be the final roster. You're trying to figure out who's going to be. What answers have you found here? Because we need to see the results of those answers, and we have not yet, right? And then at some point we have to ask and question ourselves, right? Is it that the Bulls don't have trade partners? Or is it that they're so incompetent that they can't pull the trigger on a deal because they don't know what the hell they're doing, right? At some point we got to look, and again, rumors are rumors for what they are. Right? But even hearing things, when you keep hearing all the teams that could be interested in Zach LaVine, and why can't the Bulls get a deal done? You keep hearing about the Warriors and their interest and where the struggles and their interest in Nikola Vučević, but you can't get a deal done. And when you pair that last year with hearing that the Philadelphia 76ers offered us 2 second-round picks for a player that every sign was pointing towards we weren't going to re-sign in the offseason, and you didn't take it because you wanted to fight for the play-in. We have no vision. AK and Eversley, until proven otherwise, they have zero vision. And until that comes and the execution of that vision is something that we see the results of, we're going to be right back here consistently. And it is what it is at this point. I'm going to stay here to cover it. At least hopefully I give you guys some entertaining coverage of this bullshit ass team, because listen, that's where we are as a franchise. And like I said, until we're basically waiting on something magical to happen. We're waiting for Matas Buzelis, despite not being a consistent, getting consistent 18, 20 minutes to take off and become a star. We're waiting and hoping that Coby White and Io, despite their roles changing every single year, to take off and to just flourish into these amazing pieces, right? We're hoping that Josh Giddey, despite not having a roster that really kind of fits his skill set, really, truly, we're hoping that he can take off and become that triple-double machine. We're hoping that Patrick Williams, a player that continually shows us that he is a sub role player in the NBA, for him to turn into that star because they drafted him 4th overall. We're sitting there waiting and hoping for things that we aren't making happen because we aren't putting, even if these players have this potential, we aren't putting them in the best position. And, oh, by the way, they're still coached by Billy Donovan. What are we doing? That's seriously the question. What are we doing? I guess we'll see. But moving on from that, Billy Donovan also proved that Bulls medical staffs are idiots. He said this yesterday. I think what ended up happening was Torrey Craig, got hit on the nerve. He was having a hard time getting his muscles to react of where he was hit. And as that started to come back, he started to have pain in his ankle. And after that, they figured out, going back through the video and looking at it, that it was an ankle sprain. So they're just treating that now. So you mean to tell me that something that was reported initially as developing into an ankle sprain, they're saying that no, he actually sprained his ankle on the initial play where he got hit on his nerve, but we were so focused on the nerve that we didn't even really look at the ankle. Now, maybe this is me and my pessimism, me and my frustration with this team coming out. This very well could be true. I want to be clear here and fair here. This just could be my frustration overall. But how do we go? We're on our 3rd medical staff in the last 5 years. And how is every single medical staff that we have incompetent? How is it that every single medical staff that we have is incompetent? Every single one of them. You mean to tell me that you could have been treating Torrey Craig's ankle sprain weeks ago? Because that's how long he's been out. We didn't even know exactly why he was out. We just kept hearing that he was missing games. And it turns out that it's been the ankle sprain all along. You had to go back and look at the video to realize, oh, you know what actually has happened here? He actually sprained his ankle. Let's start treating that. What? I get it. I'm not a medical guy. I probably need to be shutting the fuck up, to be 100% honest with you. But at the end of the day, like, what the hell is going on here? What's happening? It's ridiculous is what it is, to be 100% honest with you. And, not even to say, like, moving off, we know that Torrey Craig wasn't a huge part of this Bulls rotation or anything like that. Like, I understand that. He's not going to be a huge part of the rotation as long as everybody's healthy. But at the end of the day, like, what if this was Zach? What if this was Vooch? Right? What if this was one of the key players? And that's not to say everybody deserves proper medical treatment, but what if it is Zach and Vooch? And you sat there and you diagnosed and you treated something else, and then you realize, oh, wait, it's actually the ankle. Like, that is that level of listen, I don't follow every team's medical staff as closely, so maybe this is a common practice with other teams as well. And please correct, if you know, please correct me so I can shut the hell up. But at the end of the day, like how much can you get wrong as a medical staff? Your job is to be a medical staff, to provide. Maybe I'm tripping. Like I said, maybe I just need to shut up. But come on, man. What are we doing here? Anyway, the Chicago Bulls have a game today against the Charlotte Hornets. This is a team that comes in with a 9-win record. They're one of the bottom teams in the East. Now, they have talent. I don't want to act like this isn't a Charlotte Hornets team that, when healthy, has talent. They do, right? But I also think that this is a team that we lost to at one point in the season as well already. No, I actually won both games against. Did we have a comeback victory against them? Is that what happened? But this is a team that, when they're healthy, we know what the Charlotte Hornets can be. They can be a tough team, right? Especially with LaMelo Ball playing at the level that he's playing at. He's averaging some of the most points in the NBA. That's always going to be something that's tough for the Bulls. But we got Lonzo. He's playing today. Io's back, right? So we got that going on. With Brandon Miller, Miles Bridges, Mark Williams, this is going to be a tough matchup for the Bulls. And while the Hornets, I can go over what their like stats are, but then again, because they've had so big fluctuations with the health of their roster, it really isn't an indication of who they are, I don't think. But last 5 games, they have a net rating of negative 0.8, which is 17th in the NBA. Their offensive rating over that same time period is 110.3, which is 26th in the NBA. Surprisingly, over the last 5 games, they have a top 5 defense. 111.1 defensive rating. That's good enough for 8th in the NBA. The 25th in true shooting percentage, 27th in effective field goal shooting percentage, 29th in turnovers. They are first in rebounding percentage, though, so look out for that, right? But the things that, they struggle at, they aren't a good shooting team. They aren't a good scoring team overall. They have not been. But then again, like I said, because of how unhealthy their roster's been, I don't know if those numbers are a true indication of what we could see today with them basically having full health coming into the night. So the Bulls, much like the game against the Hornets, they need to be on their P's and Q's. They have to be on their toes and prepared, because if they're not, this team can give the Bulls fits, especially with that defense and rebounding. That's the key thing that you got to look at forward there. Also, their free throw rate is 4th in the NBA. So they get to the free throw line. The Bulls foul a lot at times. So those 3 are the key stats there. The Bulls have to keep them off the boards as much as possible. How good is the Charlotte Hornets defense looking tonight, and how many fits is it giving the Bulls is another key thing to look at. You got to watch out for those things against this team, because if they do come in defending well, if they come in rebounding the ball well, and they get to the free throw line and LaMelo gets on one of his heaters, it could be a long night for the Chicago Bulls. And as we know, you cannot take anything for granted with this Bulls team as far as production or performance. You just don't know what we're going to get every single night. So the Bulls hopefully are locked in and prepared. This is the last home game before the Bulls go out on a 3-game road stretch. And we'll see. The Bulls have already secured a losing record in this 5-game home stretch, and we'll see what they can do. But guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you guys are following us at Bulls Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns. bullscentralpod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the number 1 spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, but that's thanks to you, lovely and beautiful people. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See red if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.